Sources are saying that the Air Force Authority of India has written a letter to the DGCA complaining about Indian Air Force fighter planes passing through the airspace over the Nagpur airport without actually coming forward to inform the air traffic control. The letter is now going to be forwarded to the Air Force headquarters. We've got our National Affairs Editor Srinjoy Chaudhary with more. Srinjoy, take us through the details about this letter. What exactly is happening in this case?
Yes, the Air Force also says this is exactly what happened. First of all, there were these 4 fighter which entered the Nagpur airspace without the air traffic controller having any idea about it. Then, of course, this created a bit of a flap. The Airports Authority has written to the DGCA, the Director General of Civil Aviation, complaining about the Air Force. Now, once it reaches the DGCA, it will be forwarded to their headquarters. Then we will see if there is an inquiry, what happens as a result of this. Because the worry here, as expressed by the Airports Authority, was if the air traffic controller doesn't know that 4 fighter planes are into Nagpur airspace, it would create enormous problems for them, and they should have been told what had happened.
So, Srinjoy, how exactly does this move ahead then? A complaint, it's almost out in the open now. This letter is being forwarded, but what exactly happens? What kind of a protocol really are we talking about here?
Well, very simply, before any plane, including an IAF plane, has to enter a certain airspace, the air traffic controller has to be told that it is going to be there at a certain time, at a certain height, and how many planes. In this case, the Airports Authority of India says that they were not told, and which is why they have complained, because they said that it would be very difficult to schedule flights and could be potentially dangerous.
Okay, let's also get an aviation expert in on this. Mr. Vipul Saxena now on the line with us. Mr. Saxena, what's your perspective on this development? It's obviously a disturbing situation. We're talking about the Airports Authority of India complaining to the DGCA, but what's your assessment of the situation, sir?
See, this is not the first case which has happened recently. In fact, such coordination lapses between the Airport Authority and Air Force has been happening in the past as well. And there have been a lot of coordination meeting conducted by DGC in the past as well to have better traffic management through a better coordination between Air Force and the Airport Authority. And I'm really surprised. There is a unit called MLU, which is there in at the Airport Authority itself, which coordinates various movements of civilian aircraft into the defense airspace and also defense aircraft into civilian airspace. So having that kind of setup already available, I mean, these are definitely indicator of some kind of serious lapses on their part.
So where exactly is this communication lapse happening? As far as things stand right now, it's obviously, from the looks of it, reports indicating that the Indian Air Force choosing not to respond and not to communicate with the ATC. So where is exactly the fault lying right now, sir?
The fault, in my opinion, lies with the Air Force, which probably has not communicated their program to the airport authorities.
Okay, and is there any way that the situation needs to be sorted out? Because obviously this is something very, very serious and it needs to be addressed very urgently then.
Yeah, obviously this need to be investigated where the lapse is, and at least for future traffic management. So some directive or some instruction are to be given so that such things don't reoccur in the future.
Okay. All right, Mr. Vipul Saxena, aviation expert, thank you for joining us with your inputs on the story. Kashif, our correspondent, also joining us with more details. Kashif, what are the details that you have on this developing story?
Well, Nida, as Srinjoy and Vipul Saxena, the expert, pointed out that there has been a repeated communication gap between the civil aircraft authorities, which is the Airport Authority of India, as well as the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force, on its part, always says that their sorties, their movements are secretive and they can't part with that information. So there has been a communication gap or so. In this latest incident which happened in the Nagpur airspace yesterday in the afternoon, what we understand is that 4 aircraft of the Indian Air Force ventured into this airspace. When it was closed, there was a notification issued that the airspace is closed, and at that time, the Nagpur ATC had got intruder aircraft. They didn't know what kind of aircraft, who the aircraft were, where were they coming from. In fact, the Nagpur ATC went on to say in a complaint filed to the DGCA, which will be forwarded to the IAF authorities, that this kind of movement, unknown movement by the IAF, puts strenuous pressure on the controllers, the air traffic controllers sitting at that time, who do not know about such movements. So clearly a huge communication gap, Nida.
So, Kashif, and the other disturbing aspect to this entire story, it's not the first instance that we're talking about a violation of this kind. So, obviously, what we're talking about is something that needs to be done and needs to be done urgently to come out and curb a situation like this from happening again.
Absolutely. In fact, what we also know that in the past there have been serious lapses because of this communication gap between the Indian Air Force and the civil authorities. In fact, one of the times in Mumbai itself, there was a gap when the President's cavalcade, rather chopper movement, was in fact in the line of a civil aircraft. So there have been repeated lapses like these. There have been measures which have been tried to put on by the both the authorities. But yes, in fact, in this latest incident also, the standard procedures were not followed. And now what the IAF sources tell us that there could be inquiry into it because the DGCA has submitted a formal protest against these IAF movements which are not informed to the civil authorities.
Kashif, even as to try to get in more reactions on this exclusive news break we're getting here on Times Now, also take us through this. To what extent then, given what we're seeing right now, given what we know so far, to what extent has the Indian Air Force come out and actually flouted norms in this scenario?
Well, we understand that there has been no formal statement from the IAF on this issue. They have not yet responded to our queries on this latest communication gap. But what we understand that this airspace violation happened in the afternoon of yesterday, and this was when the airspace around Nagpur airport was closed. The Nagpur ATC had no information regarding these 4 aircraft. In fact, IAF has repeatedly said that their movements are secretive. They would not inform the civil authorities. But that argument is not bought by civil authorities because they think that it is a huge safety lapse. Fighter aircraft at the same flight levels of the civilian aircraft coming close to each other could be a big catastrophe. And because of that, what the civil authorities have always requested, that they could inform the civil authorities if they have any movements, then they will stop all the passenger aircraft at that time.